Philippe, how did you discover Bitcoin and how has it changed your life?
Hey, that was a lovely intro. I don't have to speak anymore after that. Thanks. Lawrence, it's a pleasure to have to be on here and to see you again. It was great meeting you at Bitcoin Atlantis in Madeira. That was really one hell of a conference. Um, my story into Bitcoin was like most, I think it's very similar. We were speaking about this before. Like a lot of us get into Bitcoin first, hear about Bitcoin and instantly dismiss it. And that was my 2012 moment when I first heard about it. And it was, I think it was 2011, 2012, someone talking about it maybe going to $100. I saw that WikiLeaks was couldn't take any card payments, MasterCard or Visa payments, and they were accepting Bitcoin. I was like, oh, that's interesting. But then just thought, hey, it's just magic internet money, as we all thought it was. Then absolute silence between 2012-ish up until 2017. And when I was on Reddit, yes, I apologize, I was a Redditor. And I see that the Bitcoin subreddit was taking off. There was that meme of that roller coaster guy with his hands in the air, and it was going up all the time. Then I get a phone call from my friend, one of my best friends. He's like, "Hey, Philip, have you seen this Bitcoin thing? It's like a really good investment. It's like a good inflation hedge. They're only going to be able to have 21 million. You should get into it." It's like, "How? I'll teach you." So he got me into it. He made me download a Coinbase account at the time and a wallet. He told me just buy it with your credit card and then instantly put it into your wallet and download your keys and keep them safe. I was like, okay, that's pretty straightforward. I mean, it wasn't as straightforward, but it worked. Then I noticed on Coinbase there was some other coins. I was like, hey, what's Ethereum? What's Litecoin? He goes, oh, those are other things that could have potential. And both of us didn't really understand what we're getting into, and that led us down the path of me playing around with the ICO craze of the 2017, and there was all these ICOs that were coming out, and every time I'd put a few quid in there, and next thing I know I get burnt and stuff, or thinking the next one I'll make a big packet, the next one I'll 10x, next one I'll 100x or whatever, and it never really happened. But I realized, okay, that's not really happening, but Bitcoin is still the king. Then the markets crashed 2018, and I was predominantly 100%, like they say, 90% Bitcoin. And I had some Ethereum and Litecoin. And then along came 2019, 2020. And when COVID hit and you saw the world descending into some crazy clown world scenario, and I saw the amount of stimulus being pumped into the market. And remember, sorry, as you introduced me, you said that I worked 13 years in financial in traditional finance. I thought I had it figured out. I thought I knew finance, but it really wasn't the case. That's the case with a lot of people working in traditional finance. They think they know what money is, but they don't really know. I started studying more about Bitcoin. That was around May 2020, and that was the time when my working in London went online because of the measures that they took. Next thing I know, I moved to Belgrade with my wife because my job went online. And as I'm in Belgrade, it just hits me that, okay, this Bitcoin is the thing. And that was by July 2020. And I became a proper maxi, I guess. I sold all the shit coins I had, and I started to really understand. I read the Bitcoin Standard by Safety and Moose. I rejoined Twitter, and I joined Bitcoin Twitter and saw the brilliant memes and activity that was happening there that helped a lot. Read some articles and stuff, and it was just great to see having. It wasn't like one day. Yeah, I was at a pre-coin, or not a pre-coin, a pre-maximus, and the next day I was a maximus. It was a gradual process, but every stage when I started to discovering a new part about Bitcoin that just enlightened me. And I think the final epiphany was the difficulty adjustment. When you realize that all the technology that makes up Bitcoin has been discovered, well, not discovered, has been used and created before, but it was the difficulty adjustment that actually glued it all together. And I kind of related that to how interest rates work in the fiat system. How when the economy is overheated, they raise interest rates to try and slow things down, and then when the economy is busted and they need to spur growth, they lower interest rates, so it encourages people to borrow. But when Bitcoin, you know, if the hash rate is really heating up, they will increase the difficulty. And the other way around, if the hash rate decreases, people will start to then the difficulty decreases, and this is what allows the decentralization of Bitcoin to happen further. What I saw was a huge epiphany was then in 2021 when China banned mining in its own jurisdiction. That it was at that point that Bitcoin mining, the hash rate of Bitcoin was about 60% in China when they banned it, and then you saw Bitcoin going down for one of the biggest difficulty adjustment downward adjustments ever, and you saw how it instantly just decentralized further, like cutting off the head of a beast, and then that beast growing 50 more heads. It was insane, and that really got to me. Then there was many other things as well about it, but yeah, that's my journey. Oh yeah, I mean, I can continue with my journey saying that was in 2021, and then by 2022, I went public, living in Serbia with my wife and my son. My wife and I we became quite socially active on media, and we were raising the profile of the royal family here. We visited a lot of the country. We gave a voice to people that don't really have a voice through our platforms. We really brought the idea of monarchy back to the country, where it kind of suffered some over the last 20 years. Like it's hasn't been taken off, and I guess it needed some fresh, younger faces. And since I've been outside the country, my older brother as well, my twin brother, finally it was my return. My wife being Serbian as well, she speaks fluent Serbian, and I'm learning. And my son his mother tongue is Serbian. That really got the hopes, the imaginations of a lot of people going. Then in 2022, we were invited onto a TV show called the Ivan Ivanovic Show, which is, I guess it's the Saturday Night Live equivalent of Serbia. And that's when the host, who knew I was into Bitcoin because we met a few days before, asked me, is now a good time to talk about crypto? And that's when I interrupted him and said, like, no, it's all about Bitcoin. And that 3-minute spiel afterwards that I went on about, that monologue went viral. Next thing I know, I was on my first Bitcoin podcast. So shout out to Daniel Prince on One Spitten podcast. He took me under his wing and introduced me to loads of people. Next thing I was on Safety Namusa's podcast, which to me was a head, you know, my mind was blown. I was like really surreal. Next thing I know, I'm flying out to Bitcoin Miami. That was in 2022, staying in an Airbnb with Daniel Prince and Andre Loja, who's the guy who organized. Yeah, he's the guy who organized Bitcoin Atlantis, and he brought the president of Madeira with him as well. When we arrived the next day, we went to have breakfast at Michael Saylor's house, villa in Florida, where Saylor basically showed us like a 45 minutes masterclass of orange pilling at the president of Madeira. That was my introduction to to the Bitcoin world. A few hours later, I met Samson, and next thing I know, he offers me a job at Jan 3, and the rest is history.
Amazing. It just shows though, and I've talked to so many people on this podcast, so many people, like Bitcoiners, we have a different mindset. We're out there to help people and connect people, and compared to other traditional businesses, you know, like, and I think that's got down to do with maybe probably the fiat mindset that you have before you come into this. You know, the fiat mindset is completely different compared to the Bitcoin mindset of helping people and encouraging people and getting things done and moving things quickly and faster, and introductions and networking. You know, how would we have ever met? You know?
Well, I think the fiat mindset is what makes us all go into shitcoins.
Yeah.
You see, yeah, that's what creates the shitcoins, is that a technology like Bitcoin comes out, the first and only and one, the only one that's going to ever matter, but it's open source, and people with a fiat mindsets are going to use that and to try and scam other people and to say, hey, look, here's another Bitcoin. It's going to be faster, better, more secure, or more, not, can't be more secure, sorry, faster. It's going to have this and that, and they raised a lot of money for marketing purposes, and they're able to push these shitcoins out there, and people fall for it, and I fell for this. And what do? The people behind those coins are just doing it so they can stack more Bitcoin. So so for anyone out there just getting into Bitcoin, just do not get distracted by anything else, because you are just being used as what we call as exit liquidity. They're just trying to take your money to get themselves more Bitcoin. So really just focus on the one that matters, and that's Bitcoin. There will never be an opportunity ever again for digital scarcity. The opportunity and the conditions for digital scarcity can only happen once, and that was it with Bitcoin. So try replicating that again. Impossible.
Yeah, yeah. And as you mentioned there, unfortunately, a lot of people get sucked into these shiny object syndromes.
Mm-hmm.
That you know, and it happens to us. You know, it happened to me as well. I got sucked into it as well before I truly discovered Bitcoin. I got wrecked with Terra Luna before, you know, and it just really opened my eyes about what's really going on, you know. But I got out of it. I dusted myself off. I'm on the
Hey,
right path now, and
you're
I'm focused.
yes, you're a survivor. So I applaud you. We're all survivors.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
and we're trying to bring the people down the journey of not what happened to us as well. Isn't that's really the whole reason why I'm doing this education as well, to make people aware about what is out there, and what is happening to people. Yeah.
Right. Well, you saw during the so what half opened my eyes was 2008. I saw that the 2008 great financial crisis, as it's called, that housing prices since then had skyrocketed, because obviously they started going, the rest of the world started to go into quantitative easing, which is just a fancy word of saying money printing. This is something that was first championed by the Japanese central banks in 2001, given that they had the tiger economy, as it was called, in the 90s, suffered something similar. And in the 90s, Japan was up there. It was 40% of the global equity markets, but they suffered a huge financial shock. From being about 40 to 60% of most people's of equity portfolios, they went down to about 10%. They really went in a deflationary manner scenario, and so the Bank of Japan had to create new ways. The Central Bank of Japan had to create new ways of trying to stimulate the economy. So they went and got into negative interest rates and started to figure out new crazy ways of printing money to try and keep the economy going. So they were the ones who first got into quantitative easing. And then the rest of the Western world saw that what was happening in Japan and saw, okay, we could start doing that in 2009, 10 onwards, and especially also during the European debt sovereign crisis. But this is something that I knew what was going on. I knew quantitative easing wasn't a great thing, but I didn't really actually tie it to the fact that it was pure money printing, but just covered up with special words. That really what they're doing is they are printing their own money to buy their own treasuries, their own bonds, so then they can then lend that out to banks, and those banks will then meant to then reinvest it into the economies. But what actually happens is a little bit gets reinvested through, and they expect the forces of Keynesian economics, of trickle down economy, to take effect, but that doesn't really take effect. What actually takes effect is the Cantillon effect, and those who are closer to that source of money will end up investing that money into their own pockets, and you will tend to see them going into real assets. And as I said, the property prices since 2000, real estate since 2008, 2009 exploded. And it took a while for me to connect those dots. And then you saw it again during 2020. And then that was at a grander scale. You saw the biggest dilution of the money supply, of fiat money supply, that ever happened. You saw about 30% of all dollars that had ever been printed happening in the space of a few months. And people weren't worried about this. People weren't talking about this. Obviously, you, me, and a lot of other Bitcoiners or to-be Bitcoiners who saw this were, wow, this is crazy. I need to study more about what's going on over here. And then look what happened a couple years down the road, that we were left with some record inflation in countries that hadn't suffered inflation for years, ended up getting double-digit inflation. And that was official inflation. Official numbers always kind of tweaked. Unofficial inflation was much higher. You and I know very well. I mean, this is another conversation that the authorities do like to play with the numbers to try and make them look more digestible. Yes, so it was. I don't know where I'm going with this, but what I'm going to say was it was crazy seeing quantitative easing going on overdrive into 2020, and now what we're having is we're seeing new ways of trying to keep the economy going. I don't know if you're aware of what's happening in Japan and their issue with the yen. Now, since it all started in Japan, it looks like it's going to be ending in Japan, as in that could be the domino effect, that Japan finally had to raise their interest rates from negative to 0.5%. And now their yen is being devalued. And you have to remember that they are one of the biggest holders of US treasuries. And now their currency is being devalued to a point where they are wanting to sell U.S. treasuries so they can then to value they can buy they can buy yen to try and bring down the devaluation of the yen. But the Americans at the moment are saying, no, you can't sell the treasuries. Here's some dollars to try and keep your currency more valuable. So this is going into interventionism of the currency markets, and this could set off a big domino effect that at some point there's a certain amount of money that you can print that will be no more, and it will start to have a cataclysmic effect, a knock-on effect. We don't know when that is, but it's looking like Japan could be the trigger.
Yeah, and I have been following it, and there's been a lot of movement in the last kind of 10 days, 2 weeks with the yen, you
Yes.
know, and it is very
Every
alarming.
time the yen hits 160 yen per dollar, the central bank intervenes. You can see it in the chart. It's absolutely incredible, and
Yeah. And
it's
it's see the thing about this as well. A lot of people, okay, when they read things in the papers and they're reading things about different countries that are far
Mhm.
away from them, they think this doesn't concern them, but everything's connected. And
Of
that's
course.
most people don't realize that. We're in Europe, we have the euro, we're connected to the dollar, the dollar is connected to the yen. It's all connected.
It's one man's debt as another man's asset. And that's the problem with the system. That's the problem with this fractional reserve system that we have. It's that we're able to create money out of thin air, not just through money printing and quantitative easing and all those fancy jargons that they use, but actually just through the actual banking system itself. That the bank doesn't have to hold 100% of the depositors' assets. They can have holding ratios of a percent, basically. They don't even have to have more than 1% of the depositors' money deposits of cash in kind in their accounts at any given moment, because they keep on lending it out and lending it out and lending it out. They think that the system, and this is all based on trust. When that trust dries up and everyone comes asking for their money back, then there's not going to be enough to go around. And that's when the bank run happens. And that's when the system loses confidence. And all of a sudden, what we've seen in places like Lebanon recently, and it's horrible to see, you see people's savings disappear in a matter of seconds. And you see triple digit or hyperinflation happening because the system fails. The trust in the system fails.
Yeah. Isn't there something happening right now in Cuba as well? I've been following something in the last 2 or 3 days. Something's
I
happening with the
saw,
central bank in Cuba.
yes,
It's
I
not
saw,
out, and that's the thing, such a big thing that's not out in the mainstream media. They're really keeping the lid on this.
they're keeping the lid on because people are starting to realize that, okay, if we want to settle with one thing I've been reading is that they want to settle in oil. Energy is a big issue, and if you want to buy energy, you have to buy and settle in the US dollars. But you need to keep US dollars cheap, and because US dollars have been rising a lot now a lot of people are starting to buy US treasuries as a way of keeping the dollar cheap for themselves. And this is having an effect on the US that now they are having inflationary pressures happening on them, because countries like Mexico are buying loads of treasuries, so they're able to then settle oil contracts with the treasuries that they buy. But every time they do this, they devalue the dollar. So it's this constant game of currency wars that's happening left, right, and center with the US dollar at the core of it, because that was that's the global reserve currency as per discussed through the Bretton Woods, actually even before that. And what was then Bretton Woods failed in 1971 thanks to the Nixon shock, because they realized that gold was that countries started to wanting to redeem the gold, that the system wasn't working, and there was a lot of fissures and cracks in the system, and so he decided to take the whole of the world off the gold standard, and put it onto a petrodollar standard. So this is the point now where the petrodollar, or the fiat standard, you could argue what standard we're in right now, is under huge question right now. And these systems are designed with that debt is what drives them. And in order to create new fiat, you are creating it out of thin air, essentially. And in order to service that fiat, the debt on that fiat, you have to create more fiat to service that debt. So it's a perpetual system that keeps on getting larger and larger, and there's no stopping it. There will be at one point where
it seems like it's spiraling out of control.
Yes, and it's just getting larger and larger, the bubble larger and larger, and we don't know what's going to pop it. So, or when it's going to pop. So, yeah, and right now we're seeing liquidity crises, and where is the liquidity going to come from? Obviously, they're going to start printing more money again. So we're going to get into a point where they're going to start printing more, because that's the only way out. But they're going to call it different things.
And when they print money, so some people that might watch this might understand what is money, because we're trying to educate new people as well to Bitcoin. When governments print money, it just means that the value of the currency goes down in value. Yeah. A lot of people think when they print money. I was talking to somebody locally in a shop beside me, an older man. He looked quite affluent. Yeah, I knew he's done well in life. And we were just talking about money. And he said to me, sure, we need to take money. They need to print money because they need to exchange it for the money that's out there already and swap it. So that's why they print money. And I'm there looking at him saying, this guy seems to have done well in life, but he has no idea what's about to hit, what is coming.
Financial literacy is gone down a lot. I say recently, for many years, purposely. This is something that I want to. You even mentioned it in my introduction. It's one thing I'd like to install in people. I'm still learning about how finance works through learning about Bitcoin. But one thing is for sure is that people are not aware of the simple force economic. Basic economics that if you have an increase of supply, you decrease price. So it's just look at it the other way around. Inflation is basically just dilution of your wealth. So the more you have, the more if you start producing, you have your money that you have, and then someone starts to print more of it, then you're increasing the supply of it. Therefore, the price of it goes down, and you can't afford as much. It's pretty simple. I mean, I don't know. It's hard. I don't know how to explain it any simpler.
Yeah. And then you need more of the same currency to buy the same product.
Exactly.
Because there's more supply. Yeah.
And on top of that, then people
so basically the money is broken, isn't it? The money's broken.
Yeah.
The system, the monetary system is broken. It's spiraling out of control. You could even say that money has been corrupted. We could even say that, from what's been going on. Because like in the end of the day, if governments can borrow money and they can make money from nothing, from thin air, why do people actually pay taxes?
Of course, this is the other issue of how the democracies work and how they get voted in, is basically they have the power, the power of the prince, and in order to get into power, they promise people a lot of things, and those things are only going to come into effect because they have the money printer at the side or through taxation. And that's the way people get voted in, is they want to have their free lunches. They want the next government to give them, I don't know what, some free healthcare or free lunch credits. I'm just going to come up things, or pay off their student debts or something like that. And that's very dangerous thinking, because that only ends up meaning that someone else will have to pick up the bill. Other taxpayers have to pick up the bill for that. There's
There
no
is
such
no
thing
free
as
lunch.
there's no free lunch. And this is what Bitcoin fixes, really. It means that you take away the ability for that to happen. And this is something that we're working on with Jan 3, is we want to educate governments and nation states understand that you don't need to tax your citizens anymore. If you have energy and have access to energy, and you're a government, you will know where you have access to cheap energy, then you can actually start mining Bitcoin. And when you mine Bitcoin, you are essentially making money, and you using hard work to make money. And then you can then use that money that you've mined to fund projects, infrastructure projects, improve the electrical grid, secure the electrical grid, pay for roads, build more schools, I don't know, improve hospitals, anything. And it's there without having to tax your citizens. It's quite logical, but to get to that level of education understanding is a tough route.
Yeah, and people have to more or less forget about what they've been taught about finance for the last so many years that they've been learning about it. And Philippe, I'm just wondering, okay, you're in the financial industry for a long time, okay? Why are financial people not understanding this? It's not that hard. I know it takes a bit of time to get your head around it, but when you really just get to the basics about the supply and demand of the money, yeah, and what's going on with the money, and then you put in with the supply and demand of Bitcoin, it's clear as day. Well, to me anyway.
It's clear as day to us because we now see the world through the lens of Bitcoin. We have our incentive structures now corrected by hard money practices. But to a lot of people, they've been, I would want to say indoctrinated, but yeah, maybe propagandized, indoctrinated into believing that the fiat system, the petrodollar system, is a system that works for them, and that money is a piece of paper. And a lot of people will even go as far as saying, okay, yeah, it's a piece of paper, but it's backed by the government, so it's good. But they don't really understand that money has some essential properties that need it for it to be good money. And this is one thing that fiat money is lacking in. And one of the most important things is scarcity. And I think that is what a lot of people that in the world that I used in traditional financial world are not really understanding so well. Yes, they understand that when there's too much risk in the market and there's a flight to safety, gold is the thing that it goes to, because they think gold is because it is an inflation hedge. But they don't go as far as to study further why it's needed, why gold is needed, and that obviously there's something even better than gold. That there's Bitcoin. But then they easily just go back to equities, to bonds and things like that, thinking, yeah, that's fine. That's this stuff has been working for the last 20, 30, 40, 50, 60 years, and it's going to continue working. But actually, we see now that equity markets are hard to track, highly concentrated because of the Keynesian forces that create concentration and the monopolization of companies, that they end up to having that equity indices are now becoming highly concentrated, where the top 5 companies hold about maybe even 20, 30, 40, 50% of the weight of the whole indice. And that bonds right now are an absolute car crash because because of the way that that governments are actually printing money to buy bonds, and it's just not working at all. I don't know why most people, I think it's just because they're used to the system, so that they would happy to protect it and continue doing what they're doing, because they get compensated well in it, and they, but
There's
it's
probably
that
not enough pain. There's probably not enough pain for them yet.
no
You know,
yet.
like the pain that we seen in 2008 and
Well,
2009 and 10.
that's
But that is
that's
coming. That
yeah,
we
that
can
is.
see it plain as day. It's coming.
And that's like, thanks to people people like Alex Gladstein, who wrote that incredible article that turned into a book, Check Your Financial Privilege. I think that's the other issue as well, that those people who live in cozier economies, and in economies that seem to work better, where services work better, where the inflation is less and is always in single figures, and or recently they've been in double figures, but most of these economies, there's no emergency need for Bitcoin yet. Maybe on a censorship resistant aspect, yes, after what's happened to Canada, but what he's trying to highlight is countries like Nigeria, Lebanon, Venezuela, Argentina, and those countries who constantly suffer from the effects of bad fiat management, from capital controls, from the constant debasement of money, from the money being taken away out of their hands, banks closing and not having access to banks at all. Not because the actual banking system is being nefarious, it's because it's expensive to have banking in every corner part of the world. That these people will look towards Bitcoin as a solution, and that's why the developing world, the emerging markets, will be quicker to get to understand Bitcoin, because they're not financially privileged like a lot of us are. So those working in finance, you can put them up in that top top right hand corner, or whatever corner you want to put, and they'll be the last to get it, because the system for them works for them right now, works for them fine, but them alone. But they're a small percentage. You'll find that the uh, billion or 2-3 billion people who are not having a good time with the financial system will soon to get Bitcoin quite quicker. So you're going to see a huge expansion of people moving into something like Bitcoin, because Bitcoin it gives them that protection of inflation, gives them that control that they need, gives them their individual financial sovereignty that they don't desperately have to have in order to protect themselves. And this is why at Jan 3 one of our initiatives is the Aqua wallet, which is a Bitcoin only wallet but with Tether on it, because a lot of these individuals want to have USD exposure, but we want them to also have Bitcoin and to have it on Liquid and Lightning. And it's an all-in-one wallet that gives them the ability to save and spend and in Bitcoin through either Lightning or Liquid, also spend through USDT, which is something big in Latin America, but also to save in Bitcoin and make it as easy as possible so that your grandmother can use.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
this
yeah, yeah.
is what we think will onboard the next billion people into Bitcoin.
Yeah. I think for Bitcoin, depends on where you live in the world and what level
Mm-hmm.
kind of you are at with your financial circumstances. More people in the West would see Bitcoin and in Europe and the Americas as a store of value. Yeah.
Correct, yes.
Whereas people in other countries would use it as a means of exchange.
A
But
store of value
that,
and a means of exchange. Yeah, they're seeing it for what it really is. Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
A
Uh,
peer-to-peer electronic cash system, as the white paper details. But store of value is definitely the rhetoric that's being used now for the West. People like Michael Saylor and stuff are saying that's what he wants. He's not going to go down the route of a medium of exchange, mainly because he probably wants to keep out the hairs of the SEC. But that's what his company's doing, is treasury, is using it for the treasury. So he's looking for store value and for the growth of the price, whereas other people in the world are looking for both. And I think Bitcoin will end up being used as both, because that's what good money does, and turns us into sensible spenders. The problem with fiat is that it doesn't it's a terrible store of value. Even at 2% inflation is what the Keynesians like to target. Even that, after several years, you're going to be losing a lot of your spending power. So what does that cause? That creates people to spend rather than save, and you end up having economies where you're just ending up buying and spending crap that you don't need, and it forces us to have higher time preference, and behavior, and our behaviors become more of tending towards of instant gratification. You'll see the growth of online gambling. You'll see a lot of degeneration happening in economies because people don't have a future, don't see much of a future where their money is being eroded by even higher single digits or lower double digit money. Whereas with Bitcoin, if you in a Bitcoin standard, that whole world is inverted into the incentive structure is reverted back to how it should be, much more healthy, lower time preference behavior, where people actually are more cautious about spending the money and will save the money as opposed to just buying all this plastic shit everywhere or whatever, and actually say, okay, my money is worth a lot. Am I either gonna buy this or not? I'm gonna buy this because I need it. I need this food. Am I gonna invest in this or not? I'm gonna invest in this because this is good for my economy and it will grow my economy in a healthier way. So it's basically the legacy system that we have right now is causing us to invest in a lot of stuff that we don't need. Whereas if we revert it to a Bitcoin standard, it will cause us to have a more sustainable, I hate saying sustainable model, but they've kind of hijacked the word sustainable, but we'll have much more sustainable economies where we don't have all this junk and stuff being processed.
Material things. A lot of young people, material things. Everybody wants these
Yeah.
material things. We don't need it half the
We don't need it.
half
We
of
don't
them.
need it. Exactly. Which is a complete waste of resources, time, and energy.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. And I wanted to just touch a little bit on adoption. Okay, what you can
Sure.
see in
Yeah.
adoption. Now, last year I seen a report that Bitcoin was being adopted approximately 3 times faster than the internet was being adopted in the early days. So if we look at those numbers, yeah, by the end, by 2026, it's looking like 1 billion people are going to be chasing after 21 million units.
Yes. Yes, that's crazy to think about the numbers. There are more companies out there than there are Bitcoin. There are more people out there than there are Bitcoin. If you do the maths, right, as you were saying, I think I said, okay, so let's look at how many Bitcoins are available out there. There's about 19 million, almost 20 million.
19.6, but yeah, but
19.6,
19.6 million.
19.7 or something.
There's about 3.5 million lost though, that people
Yeah,
can't get their private keys to.
without even the 3.5 million lost, right? If you divide that by how many people there are in the world, which is what, how many people there was?
About 8 billion. It's just
8 billion, right?
Yeah.
So you end up with, that means per person, 0.003 Bitcoin per person, right? That's 30 million Satoshis a person, I think. Then you fast forward in 40 years, the halving of
3 million Satoshis. Is it 3 million
3 million,
Satoshis?
sorry.
Yeah.
0.003. 0.003. Yeah, 3 million Satoshis. Yeah, only 3 million Satoshis. How much is 3 million Satoshis? How much is 0.003 Bitcoins worth to buy today in today's price? It's about 150 euros, more or less. That in that 0.003 in 40 years time, in the 2064 halving, would be how much one block subsidy is. So what I'm trying to say is that for 150 euros today, you can buy the block subsidy for what would be in, the block subsidy for the newcomer users over here is how much Bitcoin is given out every time you mine a block.
It's produced every 10 minutes. It's made every 10 minutes is a block made.
And how much energy is securing is going into that process. In 40 years from now, that right now it's at 3.125. In 40 years now, it's going to be 0.003. That shows you that in 40 years time, how little you have to spend today in order to have 10 minutes of most of the world's hash power securing your Bitcoin. So really, if you as Grandpa Lawrence or Grandpa Philip over here haven't bought your $150 worth or euros worth of Bitcoin today and secure that for your grandchildren, you're not going to be a very popular grandpa.
Yeah. Grandkids going to be saying, Granda, how did you miss Bitcoin?
Yeah, exactly. It's going to be like that one meme. It's like, what did you do during the pandemic or something like that? Or like, Grandpa, I ate steak and stacked loads of Bitcoin, and the sign goes like fucking legend,
Yeah. So basically, we can see, yeah, and we're trying to share the hope with people of what we can see as Bitcoin being an insurance for us. Well, that's what I can see it as for
It's
me
an
and my
assurance.
family.
It's an assurance for everybody. It's an assurance. And the best thing is that in the fiat world we live in, and this is what we're trying to teach people and companies as well and nations, it's like, okay, we have a system that's not working right now. It's starting to fail around the edges. And very soon, one day, it will probably all fail. And the best insurance policy against that system is what is the biggest threat to that system? It's Bitcoin. So what's the best thing to do for an insurance policy is buy the thing that's threatening it, and that's Bitcoin. So this is why we think a lot of nation states are actually secretly stacking Bitcoin without telling us. And if you think there's, like, for example, if you think there's a 1% chance that Bitcoin is going to do well, it's going to be the next system, you'll put 1% of your treasury into Bitcoin. But I believe that a lot of companies, a lot of people, and a lot of wealthy individuals are putting more than just 1% of their Bitcoin. We see the numbers right now, especially since the ETFs have gone out, that okay, that's not buying Bitcoin directly, but people are getting almost direct exposure to Bitcoin. They are hoovering up Bitcoin at about 3, 4, 5,000 coins a day. And remember that there's only 450 coins being produced a day. So the math suggests that we're going to go in one big mother of all supply shock soon. So as Samson calls it, the Omega candle, as Max Kaiser calls it, the God candle, that huge supply shock is going to happen sooner or later, and we're going to get one hell of a drive upwards.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, it's because
And it'll happen more and
it's
more.
simple maths. It's just simple mathematics. That's all it is. Supply
Yes,
and demand. Yeah,
exactly.
450 being made now. Yeah, at the moment, and 2 days ago there was 4,800 something Bitcoin bought by the ETFs.
Exactly.
So that's a 10x demand. Yeah.
10x demand, yeah.
Now the Asians are in. The Hong Kong ETF is launched. The Chinese, they're trying to allow it so people on mainland China can invest in it. Everybody's looking at the one, the
Of course
the
they
the
are.
the, the one
And,
bit of
and
hope,
only
the one bit
and
of
only
insurance.
about 2% of the world are actually aware of this at the moment. I'm ballparking over there,
Yeah,
but given how
or,
far
or
how
or
much
even
adoption,
less, or even
or
less
even less.
maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. But that's because we put the time into it, and we're
Yes.
trying to educate other people as well on it, because I want my friends to uh to learn this and understand what's going on, but they're just too busy working and
I
running
know.
their businesses and fixing problems and
And it's so easy just to set up an account with anyone from Relay to Swan. I mean, if at Jan3 we have for high net worth individuals, it's just set up an account and just DCA into it. Very easy. Just forget about it. Just experiment a little bit, buy a little bit here
yeah,
and there, and just store it. And you never know when you need it.
yeah. So let's talk a little bit about uh Bitcoin for the kids. Yeah, because
Ooh,
I'm
yeah,
really passionate about that, and I've
I'm very
got young kids.
passionate.
You met my young
Yes,
son in
yeah.
Madeira. You have a young daughter, wasn't it, that just got
I've
christened?
got a son, yes, son,
Mm.
6-year-old, and a daughter who's just christened. Yeah,
Yeah,
6 months old. Yeah. And for me, the reason why I understood Bitcoin and I want to do so much is because it's for them. You know, life is about sacrificing ourselves for our children to have a better future. And this is what Bitcoin teaches you, is that low time preference, behavior is what makes a better life for everyone. You know, this is what Bitcoin is. It's proof of work. It's hard work pays off. You know, you invest time now so you have a better future later. It's with any that philosophy is with everywhere. You know, you go to the gym now to you put in those hours, and then later on you reap the benefits of being healthy and also looking good in front of the mirror. So it's there.
yeah,
That's life, but
yeah,
that's what also comes in with family. Family is tough, family's hard, family's work, but the payoff is beautiful to see your children growing into beautiful beings. Such smart kids, you know, they learn so much. Yes, you have trials and tribulations, and it's tough, and it's sometimes really difficult, and you want to pull your hair out. And but other times, you know, the love that you have for you and them, it's beautiful, and then you just have to leave a better world for them. And right now, if you look around you, the world that we're leaving, that many people are leaving for these kids, it's not only is it not working, it's going to to hell. And
Sure is. Yeah.
unless you protect your children and teach them how to improve, how what the steps you're doing to improve your life, to improve it for their lives and all that, and the sacrifices we've got to do, and teach them about the lessons of hard money, the need for hard money, and also try to divert them away from the degeneracy that's coming from the West and all that. It's tough work, but I think over the long run, I think, the truth does prevail and the truth will come out. And this is something that I'm, committed to. And we need to make sure we wake up minds, not just to wake them up from to understand that the money is broken, and it always and it has been broken for many years. But there's other forces that broken money is there to almost designed to drive these degenerate behavior to destroying family values and the social fabric of living and culture, civilizations and all that. It's terrible, but we are at the point where we are at the hard times that hopefully will create hard men, and hopefully that will start to trend harder.
Yeah, there's a big awareness at the moment, and people are opening up their eyes to like being more sovereign. Yeah, a lot of people are learning about all this, and we touched on that a little tiny bit when we met. Yeah, I've been doing a lot of work on that in the last like 2 years, about myself, my own sovereignty, and a lot of people don't understand what's going on behind the scenes, that our sovereignty and our rights have been stripped away from us by our governments, and they're giving them to these corporations, like the WEF and the WHO and all this type of stuff that's coming on, these treaties that they're pushing through. So like Bitcoin can play a big role in that for people to protect themselves,
Exactly. People's freedoms are slowly being chipped away, but then we see accelerations. We saw what happened during COVID, and post-COVID, that the plans started to speed up a little bit, and because of that, it woke up a lot of people. That COVID ended up looking like a totalitarian turnkey event. But thankfully, a lot of people were aware of what was going on and actually slowed the plans down.
Yeah, there's a lot of people, there's a lot of sovereign people that I know, okay, and like real sovereign people, okay, that some people think that they are sovereign, but there's a difference, between a person, right, with your status, and a man or a woman. There's a difference in your status. But what I find is a lot of those people are afraid of Bitcoin. They think that it's more that with Bitcoin that the likes, I don't know, I don't like using these words, like they say that the cabal owns Bitcoin and they controls Bitcoin and something like that. Yeah.
Bullshit.
Yeah, it's rubbish. It's total rubbish. Like it's nothing from the truth, because Bitcoin gives you pure freedom, doesn't it?
But it's also, if the cabal does own Bitcoin, so be it. They own some Bitcoin, but what can they do with it? They can't control it. They don't have the issuance of it. They don't. It's the nodes that control Bitcoin, and it's the miners that protect it. And that 51% attack would be so expensive that the time that we figured out that there's this 51% attack going on, which would cost trillions at this point, we will happily hard fork into another coin. So they'll just be left with one block, and it will be a waste of time. So they might as well just invest in it and benefit from its incentives, and maybe that it could help change them into being better people, which are quite highly unlikely. But that's the beauty about Bitcoin, is it just fixes everything.
Yeah.
And you can't stop
let's touch a little bit, okay, on Bitcoin and how property rights. Okay, we can see what's going on all over the world, in the Middle East, in Europe. You know what I mean? For me, I see Bitcoin as one of the best properties out there, and it is the only property now.
It is that is going to be very difficult for a lot of people to understand. I think Pierre Rochard touched on this once when he was talking to Safety Namus about how he believed that that Bitcoin probably could help even the situation in Palestine. And because as at the end of the day, somehow something, I don't know how he came to the conclusion, but at the end of the day, it is about property rights. And if everyone is financially secured, then the idea of borders become less let's call it less important. And so for me, this is an issue that touches on what's happening in Serbia with our region Kosovo, which is the heartland of Serbia, where a lot of our culture was born. And I'm not too sure if you're aware of it, that in 2008 that there was a unilateral decision made without a referendum, that the UN and several of these Western countries declared that Kosovo was independent from Serbia, which was done illegally. And that's why
I
half the
remember that.
countries,
I remember all that,
yeah,
the Yugoslavian war and what happened over there.
it's
It was
very,
bad.
very,
Yeah,
very complex situation. But I believe
yeah.
that this is a situation where half the countries in the world recognize it as an independent country. The other half don't. But I believe that something like Bitcoin can help actually strip the borders away from there, and you can actually identify as whatever you want to identify with, whichever religion or faith or nationality, and the borders become to be a bit more blurred. And this will help people to regain their not just their national identity, but also their financial sovereignty. And it gives them comfort living in the zone and not having to fight and to have constant friction with their with their
With their
counterparts,
neighbors.
which the neighbors, which has been stoked by international people, by higher ups, because Bitcoin is a bottom up approach. That this means that they will want to do business with people that they're told not to do business with, and so at the end of the day, everyone will just get along. It sounds quite utopic, but actually, Bitcoin will actually help to blur borders in that respect, and give us the economic areas that we really need. This is where the European Union went wrong. European Union was a great idea up until it went beyond economic area. When it was open borders for trade and so, great idea. As soon as it started touching the sovereignty of countries and they had unelected officials giving directives to countries, that's when we had issues. And also when they created their monetary union, even that was always going to be a train crash. But you saw countries like the UK rising up and having Brexit happening. So I think that Bitcoin, that top-down approach of that where people's sovereignties have been taken away at the high level is going to be hopefully a thing of the past as people become more self-sovereign, and that comes from a completely bottom-up approach.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And even down to like regarding like traditionally, okay, people made money. They bought a second property as an investment property. Yeah, maybe they went on and built up a bit of a portfolio, 2 or 3 properties that to protect their wealth and put into something else. But now, I mean, the thing about real estate, you can't bring it with you. You can't bring it to a different country if you want. You can't take a piece out of it if you want to. How do you sell a bedroom in a property if you want to buy something else? You just can't do it.
It's
Yeah.
highly liquid, and at the end of the day, it's the price of that property is only going up because the price of fiat is going down. But it's under a Bitcoin standard, people are not going to be bothered buying properties as an investment. The actual property would just be stripped down to its utility value as a utility. Yes, locations and locations is going to play a big part, and you'll pay a premium being closer to the water, to the river, to whatever, and that will have an part. But as an investment, it's not going to play a bigger part in the future. And as you said, people, buying property will be more as a utility than anything else.
Yeah. I know a few people over here that are have a number of properties, yeah, and they have a nice portfolio. And the way I start saying to them, okay, imagine, right, if there was only 450 houses, 3-bedroom houses being built around the world every day, yeah, and you divide that into every country, 450. So Ireland might get 3-bedroom houses a day being built. Do you think that's scarce? Yeah.
Right.
You know what I mean? So it's just a different way of looking at it. Yeah. Yeah. Some of them are starting to get it now and starting asking a few more questions, but most of them still aren't. But yeah. Yeah, so it is very, very important. Bitcoin has regarding property rights, like a lot of people are going to start shifting over time. but it will take a little bit of time.
Yeah, of
Yeah,
course,
and
of course.
I can see like one Bitcoin very soon, sooner than most people think, being probably the price of a normal 3 bedroom house. You know,
Exactly.
that's what's going to happen.
Oh
Yeah.
yes, of course.
So tell us a little
I mean,
bit more about Jan 3 and your work with nations. What's been
sure. I
going on
mean,
there?
uh, where do I start? I mean, we've had a few meetings, number of meetings. Like we were in last year, we were in Costa Rica, where we met with Governor Johanndo. I always forget his second name, and I'm gonna be hopefully I'm not, yeah, don't insult her too much. But myself and Samson presented in front of the Legislative Assembly there to talk about as they are introducing their new crypto law, and we're trying to make them differentiate between Bitcoin and the rest of crypto. Sadly, that law now is coming is it's has the new draft came through a few weeks ago and it wasn't favorable towards Bitcoin, but we are fighting now again to have it being more to have second eyes looking at it, and looking like we're gaining some ground there. We were recently in Suriname, where Samson met with the president there, and they are well, they're sort of interested in mining it because they found some new sources of energy, but also potentially putting it on their treasury. But also, there's one of our contacts there is decided to actually run for president, and she's a Maximist, and so she wants to run as president of Suriname. So her name is Maya, and I'm wishing her all the best, and I hope she will become the next president, because I know if she does, she will be like one of the next Bukeles. Madeira is another area that we worked on a little bit as well. You know, Samson was on the foundation, on the Free Madeira Foundation there, and we met with the president a few times. Lugano was an interesting case study as well, where they sort of de facto accepted Bitcoin as a legal tender, and more point of sales people are able to accept Bitcoin there. Where else? Montenegro, we met with the Prime Minister last year, and we talked about potential strategies there. And one thing we might be working on is a certain joint venture for mining projects. Let's see, where else? Haiti, we had some conversations there as well. Panama, we had conversations there. So there's conversations happening here and there, and
There's
it's
interest, isn't there?
it's
Yeah,
interesting.
gradually.
Gradually, nothing like El Salvador quite yet, but there's a lot of countries taking interest, and without our help, there's other countries out there, like, you know, you saw that the Kingdom Bhutan has been secretly mining Bitcoin for the last 5 years or something. I thought that was beautiful. And note,
Yeah.
it's a kingdom. Monarchies, they know what they're doing. Then there was Oman last year, who the from the highest level, the Sultan of Oman decided to invest 1.1 billion into Bitcoin mining. They have a lot of energy, of course, a lot of oil, and they need to find new revenue streams for it, and also to grow their industries. And Bitcoin can help them with that. I see Bahrain doing something similar. I know that Saudi Arabia are definitely stacking Bitcoin. It's pretty obvious. I can't guarantee it. We see some countries own Bitcoin by so I think Bulgaria actually is even stacked Bitcoin. But anyway, our approach at Jan 3 is what we're doing is, yeah, we approach them with education. We try to meet with presidents, the leaders, prime ministers, people who are in charge in those countries, and try to educate them about what Bitcoin can do. We understand at Jan 3 that Bitcoin's a bottom-up grassroots approach, but we also believe that it does need a little bit of a top-down hand every now and then. So governments and jurisdictions are kind towards Bitcoin and understand that when regulation happens, that they do it properly, and they can separate Bitcoin from the rest of the shit, basically, and they can ideally view Bitcoin as a commodity and as a free as something free that shouldn't have any capital gains tax to it, and the rest of the stuff, the rest of crypto shitcoins as securities, which need a lot of heavy regulation like any other security would. So, and when doing that, okay, we try and give them the benefits of adopting Bitcoin like El Salvador did as a medium of exchange, but that doesn't seem to be gaining much ground for this time and moment right now for obvious reasons. It's just not getting much traction, but the store of value and energy is gaining traction. So store of value, having it on your treasury is gaining a lot of traction by companies out there. A lot of corporates are now are actually interested in putting it on their treasuries, and also the energy side of things, because at the end of the day, money is energy. And if you have excess energy or stranded energy and you're not mining Bitcoin, then you, I'm afraid, are an idiot. If you have stranded free energy and looking ways of securing that energy and making money out of it, it's there, and this is what we're trying to educate. And on top of that, when we have these when governments and local authorities, jurisdictions are mining Bitcoin, are actually using Bitcoin, then they will tend to be kinder on Bitcoin users themselves, and then you'll end up having better regulations coming out in the future. So it's a long-term game that we're playing. It's very difficult, and trying to get introductions is not easy. People, like, as soon as you say, oh, we want to talk about Bitcoin, it's like, no thanks. But we're getting there. And I think in the next cycle, as you see the price skyrocketing, we're not there yet, even though we've reached record highs. It still hasn't got to that FOMO stage. I think at that point we're going to get a lot more introductions and meetings.
Definitely.
But it's good. Yeah, it's good fun. We released Aqua, the wallet, on January 3rd, which is, as I don't know if you're aware, it's a Bitcoin centric wallet with
yeah, I have it myself. I had it down. Yeah,
yeah.
I wanted to talk to maybe your team about that as well, but we can talk
cool.
after anyway. Yeah, after the interview.
It's great. It's a great wallet that Samsung saw that there was a gap in the market for a wallet that has not just Bitcoin, but Bitcoin on Liquid and Light, and also you're able to use Lightning. Liquid is very beneficial because it's a Bitcoin's L2 side chain, and it one way to reduce fees, and it's run by a federation of other companies, and sorry. And it's and also we have USDT a tether on it on Liquid, but then you can transfer using any other chains, so Tron and Ethereum, sad to say, but then it comes out as Bitcoin.
Okay, all right. Yeah. Very nice, very nice. So to wrap it up, the last question, okay? Because I like to keep these around an hour. What is coming? What can you see that's coming, and how can people protect themselves?
What I see is coming is, I see in a year or so, I see liquidity drying up from the system, the normal system, and I see then more money printing happening in the next year or two. I see a lot of more interest going into Bitcoin, but I see a lot of more like shitcoin activity happening on L2 layers and so-called, and all that, and then all this ordinal and rune stuff happening. But I see more Bitcoin is being born in the next couple of years, 2-3 years. And I see adoptions happening in countries, but mainly through the energy, through the mining side, then through the medium of exchange side. I see a lot of hope, but also I see a lot of despair and a lot of tragedy. But where there's hope, there will be education there, and there will be people holding flags of hope around the world. So it's really uncertain times, but I knowing what Bitcoin can do, I see a brighter future in a few years' time.
Lovely, beautiful. So Bitcoin is for the kids. Bitcoin is hope. Bitcoin is our insurance. And learn Bitcoin, everybody.
Exactly.
And if people want to get in touch with you, Philippe or Jan3, what's the best user handle? The website?
It's on my Twitter. It's Prince Filip 1. We can write it down on when we retweet it, and I have Instagram as well, Prince Filip of Serbia as well, and then jan3.com, and I'll give it to you in when you release it.
Yeah, no problem. We'll research. We'll put it into the video anyway. So Prince Filip, thank you for your time.
Lawrence,
it was amazing. It was amazing you giving up your time to talk to us here in Ireland. Yeah, and we will keep in touch, and hopefully you come back on the show again in a few months' time.
Would love to.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
Take care, Lawrence. Bye-bye.